Welcome to another feature Gardner segment and Planted Not Buried. I'm Rafiq Luzon, and just stay tuned for this upcoming episode. You're about to have Rachel Eva come to talk about her work in the basketball community and a certain HBCU event that went down recently. So, welcome aboard. About to go live right now. Let's see if it's working. Give me 1 second. Well, she's unable to join now. Maybe if I send another. Hold on 1 second. She should be coming on any minute. Let me say it again. We're about to have Rachel Eva come on the show. At least that's the name of her IG account. She's an author for this book called My Little Tomboy. So I look forward to seeing that. Man, this live is kind of, I'm sending a request, but obviously I don't see nothing going on. Wow, I sent a request, but it's not going through. Yeah, she was like one of the people that worked the Harlem Renaissance Classic that took place at City College earlier this month, and we'll talk more about that and also why she got into basketball, what she's doing for the community, and attend the HBCU school. I look forward to that. Man, why is it not? Okay, I sent the invites. Let's see.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Welcome aboard, Rachel.
Hi, how are you? How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good,
And
good.
thank you for taking your time to stop by this Planted Not Buried feature Gardner segment.
Oh,
And it's really an honor.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I found out that you was working the Harlem Renaissance Classic like earlier this month. So, but we'll talk more about that. But before we get there, why don't we talk a little bit about what you do like
Okay.
what you do?
Well, what I do is like what I don't do. First and foremost, I give praises to Allah, and I wake up every morning and give praise to Him, and I read, I write, I work. I have my own logistics company. I used to coach. I actually don't coach anymore. Basketball is still in my blood. I do a little commentating. I do a lot of commentating. I do a lot of analyzing. Pretty much every day. I study sports. I study basketball. Um, I have a brokerage. So my logistics company is I'm a freight broker. So I broker freight for truckers, carriers, and that's pretty much like what I do predominantly.
Wow. So at least you're involved with basketball in some shape or form. I mean, you mentioned you like literally basketball's in your blood. Like, why don't you talk a
Yes.
little bit about like how your basketball career got started?
I started playing basketball at age 7. I pretty much picked up the basketball. My brothers were playing in the backyard. I loved it. Basketball is a sport that you can pretty much do individually. So being that I was the only girl at my age around my brothers, around 5 brothers and all of their friends who I also called my brothers. So figured like I had about 10 brothers in a sense, excuse me. So basketball, I was able to take a ball, bounce it, and come right back to me. So that was a sport that I just really enjoyed playing. I was the tomboy in the neighborhood, loved to play all sports. I had my 2 female best friends. They taught me pretty much how to be dainty. They were like my sisters in a sense. So basketball became my outlet. I experienced a lot of trauma at age 7. I was sexually abused by my godfather, and that was like my outlet. So I was able to remove myself from that traumatic environment, go to the park or go outside. That would take my mind off any type of issues that I had, whether if it was worrying about what would happen tonight, worried about what my friends, how they view me in school. So I really used basketball as an outlet. As I got older, I learned how to suppress it and avoid it. So I didn't talk about it. I just avoided talking about it, and I suppressed that. So I was able to dabble into a lot of different things. You know, you talk about coaching, any and everything. You know, I kind of just kept my mind going. It was never pretty much idle. I mean, like, you know, they say idle mind is the devil's playground, but I usually like just, if I sat still, I'm thinking of what am I going to do next. I never let anything kind of take over my mind. You know, didn't do drugs, alcohol. So it was one of those moments where I just figured like I'll just pour it into sports and work, because my jobs were pretty much all commission. So I really had to work. I constantly had to work, you know. So basketball was like that sport that I gravitated to. Hence why I named my children's book My Little Tomboy.
Yeah, well, since you mentioned My Little Tomboy, like, why don't you talk a little bit about like what you're talking about when writing My Little Tomboy, and like how it felt emotionally being able to tell your story through that book.
Yeah, and I was inspired to write that because of my mom. My mom was ill. I want to say maybe 2 years before she passed away. She encouraged me to write because I would write poetry, and a lot of poetry consisted of a lot of pain. You know, it wasn't too much joyful. The words made it joyful, and my tone made it joyful, but the words was really expressing the pain that I endured over the years. And obviously I would use like my circumstances, whatever I was dealing with at that moment, and put it into words, covering my trauma. So with My Little Tomboy, I was able to write the story, all of the happy moments when I was a little girl, learned to play basketball. My dad bought my first pair of sneakers. My brothers forcing me to learn the sport before I was able to play with them. So my neighbor across the street taught me how to play, whether it was dribbling with my left hand, he taught me the fundamentals. Dribble with your left hand, going to the store, dribble with your right, coming back. When you go to the park, put up 100 free throws. But it wasn't that too extreme. I graduated to 100. So it would be, you make 10, now make 20. You make 20, now make 30. So it was always a challenge. So I took on that like challenging spirit. So that carried with me through life as a whole. You know, when I wrote it, I just kind of just wanted to pull all of the happy moments in my life. And, you know, like that way it can inspire young children, boys, girls, and even some adults.
When you're writing that book, like, how do you think that it developed your storytelling skills and your writing skills as a whole, while actually improving on your basketball career as you continue to rise to where you are right now?
I was able to, it helped me strengthen my writing skills because I had to build a character. You know, I really didn't want to tell this story of a child that lived in a dark moment of her life. So I had to build that character. I had to create the happy moments for young Eva, which was the main character. So that was sort of difficult because here I am. I just want to kind of spit out, you know, my pain and let it go. But I had to build the story. I had to show the moments that I enjoyed playing with my younger brother, the moments that I loved playing the piano with my mother, the moments where we woke up on Saturday mornings and had breakfast together, you know, where we'll come down and we never missed a meal. My mom would always have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, where the morning time we'll have pancakes and my mom will make little smiley faces, you know, out of whatever, strawberries or whatever it was. She always wanted to put a smile on our faces and keep us together as a family. So she, you know, I kind of like nurture those type of relationships now as an adult because it always takes me back to what I enjoyed as a child. So I always focus on those moments that made me smile, you know. So and I speak of those moments in the book. Yes, it's a children's book, and I'm writing book 2 right now. And eventually, you know, I want to have a children's like adapt into a book. So I want to create like an adaptation to a movie. Excuse me, not a book, a movie. So I filmed a pilot 2 years ago. It was very emotional, so it's still like in a holding cell, you know, so I'm just waiting for that right moment for God to say, you know, this is the right time.
Exactly. When you write these books, like people, like anybody that reads about you, or athletes in general, they get a better sense of how not good of a human being you are as a basketball player, but as you are like when you dealing with this, when you write thinking positive to get rid of all the negative trauma that you were dealing with while being abused by your godparents. And I know that's obviously a tough struggle to go through. And for those of you that are just watching this live, go to Rachel's shows Instagram, you'll see the link to her book, and make sure you purchase it now if you haven't purchased it already, because I promise you, you're gonna get a chance of who she is as a person.
Yes. And just to make a correction, it was just my godfather. And in the Christianity, in the faith, you're honored with godmother, godfather. As a young boy, young girl, the mother would appoint individuals to be there just in case something happened to them. If they were to pass away, then we have someone to care for us. So that's when the godparents actually become prevalent in a child's life.
Exactly. And you mentioned something about adapting it into a movie, and if it does come together, I look forward to seeing how that happens.
When it does.
When it does happen, I look forward to seeing that, because lots of great books have been adapted into movies, and when you see those movies, it gives you a sense of everything that was written in the book. It takes a lot of work to become a good writer.
Absolutely. A lot of practice.
Exactly. Now, well, to continue talking about your basketball career, like, why don't you tell the folks like where you played ball in high school and how much you enjoyed the basketball career playing in that school?
Well, when I played basketball, I started out playing basketball competitively in junior high. We didn't have a girls team, so I forced myself on the boys team. They didn't have shorts for me. I don't know why. We couldn't wear shorts, but I wore shorts in gym, but I couldn't wear shorts on the basketball team. So I had to wear sweatpants, which obviously is discrimination. There was no Title IX back then, but I had to play on a boys team. So in junior high school, I played basketball with the boys. Fast forward, played high school basketball. It started out my friends. We all wanted to go to this school called Murray Bertram in Manhattan, New York. I was the only one that got accepted. It wasn't that I was smarter than them or anything. It just happened that it was almost like a lottery in a sense, but it technically wasn't a lottery. It's just that your name was called and you attended the school. It was pretty much sort of difficult to get into Murray Bertram, and I played for that high school. And that was such a wonderful experience because I got pregnant when I was in my 10th grade. And I had my son. I was pregnant when we was playing postseason. We was playing in the postseason. So you're talking about during the playoffs. I'm pregnant. Halftime comes and I cannot stand up. So I go to my coach. I'm like, Coach G, I can't stand up. And I had 12 points. Like I had 13 points and 12 rebounds. So I was really playing hard. So he thought it was just, as a result from me playing hard. So he was trying to run Ben Gay on my back and nothing worked. I could not stand up straight. So I'm bent over on halftime. I couldn't stand up to the next day. So my mother said, you know what, let's go to the hospital. Let's see what's going on. So went to the hospital. They'd always, test and ultrasound. Come to find out, I'm in a room. And mind you, in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know what? I know I'm pregnant. I was in denial. And I'm looking at my mother's face, and she's sitting there, just waiting. We're waiting for the results to come back. And the nurse comes in and says that I'm 5.5 months pregnant. So it wasn't a shock to me, but I looked at my mother's face, and her mouth kind of was wide open. And I knew nothing about Planned Parenthood. Obviously, it wasn't something for me to learn. I knew nothing about abortions, which wouldn't have been an option because my family is so religious, and that wouldn't have been an option. But now it's, what am I going to do? Here I am 15. What am I going to do? I didn't even think about what I was going to do at that time. I just said, you know what? I got to do it. I'm going to be a mother. I got to do what I got to do. You're talking about at age 15. I'm still in high school, 10th grade. I still have 2 more years, 2 more years. So I played. And then even the following season, I played. My coach, my teammates, they were very supportive. I was able to roll my son during games. He's sitting in a stroller. My coach made him a little jersey, so he was almost like the mascot in a sense. That was very appreciative because I grew up in my church. I grew up in an Episcopalian church, St. Joseph Episcopal Church in Queens, New York. I grew up in the church, and I didn't get not one support. You're talking about I was born in that church, christened. I went to communion. We attended all functions. We were so involved with the church, Alkalite, children's youth choir, you name it. I didn't get not one support, not from one individual in that church in all of my years. Especially when I was pregnant. I was ridiculed. I was almost like crucified when I was 15, when I was pregnant. I didn't get any support, not from my minister, the priest, no one. So I felt a little, isolated. I felt isolated. Wow. Yeah, and I thought about suicide at times, because here I am, I'm 15, what am I going to do? I'm pregnant. What am I going to do? My son's father wasn't involved. When my mother wanted to talk to him, he stayed on the bus. We both took the bus home to go meet my mom and talk to her about our future plans for the child. So I told him that, what we were going to do. So we're on a bus going to my house and got to the bus stop. I end up stepping off the bus closes and he's behind the door. And he was like, I can't. So from that point on, I knew that I was going to be a single mother. So I had to grow up quick. That's it. I had to grow up. No, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. There was no whining about anything. Thank God at that time, like my friend, I have my friend Joanne at that time, Marlena, they were supportive, very supportive. And still to this day, they're still in my life. But that was just the hardest time for me, that I kind of shut myself out from the world because I couldn't face anybody. Here I am. I never said that I made a mistake. I just felt alone. That was the best way.
Yeah, I know that's obviously kind of been difficult for you being a mother during your high school days. I mean, lots of people manage to become pregnant during their high school days, and at that point they figure out, how am I going to take care of myself, especially my baby father is not in my life anymore.
Yes. And then when you figure my dad, when I was honest with my family, so I loved my dad. I loved him to pieces, and my godmother. So I ended up telling my dad. I just wanted to know that he was going to be there for me. Of all men, I wanted him to be there for me. And for sure, he said, yeah. I said, Dad, can we go to lunch? And he said, sure, let's go to lunch. That was Sunday. We were supposed to go to lunch on Thursday. No, that was I want to say Friday or Saturday. No, I'm sorry. It was a week before. So I want to say maybe the week before, and we were supposed to meet that following Thursday. He ended up dying that Sunday. So we never got to go to lunch.
So you're talking about, yeah, I know. My condolences to you on that one.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about that. He died in 1992, So, he blessed me with just spiritual energy. He blessed me with wisdom. I named my son after him. And, I still, honor the life that he has given me, So, he just was a beautiful soul.
Yeah, and to continue talking about your pregnancy story that you just mentioned earlier, I mean, I know you probably touched upon this, but to extend a little bit on it, like, how do you manage, like, being a mother during high school, for the rest of high school, and and playing basketball during those times? I know you mentioned you were in the playoffs, and I know you mentioned you played the junior year and the senior year. You're like, how do you balance that out?
Well, I didn't play my senior year because I figured it was a little bit too much, because I was so attached to my son that after school, I would have to come home, because in your senior year, you're not in your senior year, you don't stay at school all day long. You're there maybe till about 12:30, if that. And then you go into your internship if you are, assigned to one. Well, I was. So I didn't play my senior year. And I actually transferred to a school for pregnant girls, which was called IDB Wells. It was in Queens, New York. So that was almost like, what do you call those? Satellite school for my school for pregnant mothers. And it wasn't just for my school, it was other schools that was linked to this satellite program, which was amazing because they taught us a lot of the domestic skills. It's not that I didn't know how to cook, but it taught us patience, it taught us time management, it taught us how to deal with colicky babies, how to make clothing, make fresh food, organic food, puree food. It was just like motherhood 101, you know, and in addition to learning the math skills, English, literature, we still had our core classes, you know, so that school was phenomenal for me. It kept me focused. It was closer to home as opposed to my high school that I was originally assigned to. It took me about an hour and a half to get to school. So basketball was not my focus at that moment. My son was.
Exactly.
Mothers, we could bring out our children to class with us. And when the child got a little, you know, upset or sleepy, whatever it was, they had a room for that purpose. So it was a perfect scenario for me. There's nothing I can complain about when I was 15 having a child. When my dad passed away, I was able to get financial assistance, which was his Social Security. I had a job. I still maintained school. I was in and out of college because I didn't want to put my son into a daycare, you know. And when my mother said that she would support and, you know, watch my son while I go to school or while I worked, that was like the most precious thing that she could ever have said, because I, in a sense, took advantage of it because now I'm working double time, triple time sometimes, you know, and I just was able to fly. And then I decided I'm going to go to college. So with that, I just soared. I went to a JUCO, and because it was close, it was inexpensive, and I played basketball. Then I transferred to Manhattan College, and it didn't work out. It was way too far. I wasn't doing well in my classes, and I said, I'm not a failure. So I had to put myself in a better situation where I can excel. Perfect timing, because now a coach from Virginia, he came in, Coach Don Hill, saw me play. I played in the showcase. He recruited me and others. Went down to Virginia on a school trip. I enjoyed the campus. I mean, the campus could have had 2 bedrooms. It could have had, it could have been on a farm. I just wanted to leave out of New York. I wanted a new environment. I wanted to raise my son. I wanted to go to college. So I went down to the country, St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia. And I never looked back. I never went back to New York.
You can't, because you got, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, I mean, you have to be in a space where you can focus on your basketball career, school, and being a mother at the same time. I mean, you have to be like that triple threat.
I did.
I mean, you really have to.
I did.
You have to, and it's very inspiring for somebody to actually do all that and put, like, literally doing everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And it's not, I wasn't telling, it's not easy. It's not easy because there's a lot of emotions involved. You know, you got to be everything for your child. You got to be the cheerleader. You got to be the nurturer. You got to be the doctor. You have to be the therapist. You have to be, you know, everything. And you still have to be, you still have to be a student, you know, and you have to be this role model. So now you have to watch how, I'm still a kid. I'm still, in a sense, a young mother. I didn't get to, you know, go out all the time. I didn't get to hang out. Not something that was something it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but you have to kind of carry yourself in a way where, you know, you got to set like a nice example, a great example for your child. And I had a son. So that meant a lot to me, you know, because single moms really can't raise young men. You know, it's important for them to have the father in their life. And his father was not. I still struggle with that today. My son is 30. And I still struggle. I still struggle with that today. And there's nothing I regret, you know, I just pray, because there's a lot of trauma involved in his life and there's a lot of trauma in mine, you know, and so that requires us to constantly, you know, fall back into those moments that where the trauma was initiated, you know, and sometimes we just kind of bump heads. You know, I try to be supportive, but there's other things that, you know, kind of distract us. You know, he's working, I'm working, and he has a young son now too. I'm a grandmother.
Yeah, wow. So you went from struggling to take care of your own child to struggling to being a grandmother to your son's child.
Well,
I mean,
he's still mothering my child because he lives in my house. So you get what I'm saying? So
yeah, I get it. I mean, I still live with my family. I still live with my parent and my aunt here in New York City. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, by the way.
That's where I'm from. Okay, let me back up. I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens. So I'm technically a Queens girl, you know, and went back to Brooklyn when I got older but you know, I rep Queens all the way.
I've been living in Brooklyn my whole life. I mean, I was originally born at Beverly Road by the Q train, one of those little co-op houses right down there.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I'm living in Canarsie. Now I'm living in Canarsie, which is literally next door to where my high school alma mater is, Canarsie Educational Campus. But yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. But you know, my story is like, I love to share my story because with hopes that it inspires other people, you know, and I just can't wait for it to just spread throughout the world. You know, it's a compelling story. I love to share it because at one time I could not talk about it. It would be so emotional. You know, of course, when I get into details, as somebody said, Flushing Queens, all right. Yeah. You know, I get emotional when I talk about like the details. Yes, Joe. That's my friend on there. She's on there. Like, she's my sister. I can't even say my friend. She's on there. The natural skincare, like she a phenomenal like skincare line. But yeah, it's just you know, I couldn't talk about it before. So now when anyone wants to talk about it, I'm like a butterfly now. I can talk about it and soar, you know. So I'm just grateful and blessed that I was able to, you know, be taught the proper tools to deal with my healing, because we're never healed. We're healing for the rest of our lives. And that's the difficult part of any type of sexual abuse to a child. You really steal that childhood. You steal something away from that individual, whether it's a child or adult, you steal that away from them, you know, because now they got to go through healing for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's a recovery from a mental health thing throughout your life. That's how it is. That's how it is. No matter what type of career field or lifestyle that you get into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, to talk a little bit about your basketball lifestyle. I mean, you mentioned that once your basketball career was all said and done, you got to do some color commentary and announcing. Like, why don't you talk a little bit about like the whole experience and inspiration when doing color commentary for basketball?
Well, I actually I started coaching. When I stopped playing, I started coaching. So now I can pour in all of my experiences and knowledge and all of the education that I was taught and learned, you know, as a player. Now I can pour it into coaching. Now I can reciprocate what I was taught. You know, I had great coaches in my life. So now I can reciprocate. I've learned every time. I learned from every coach that I played under. So I started out coaching when I graduated college. So I graduated from St. Paul's College, and I ended up being a coach for my peers. So my friends that I played with, now here I am post-graduation, I'm coaching them. You know, it was a little difficult, you know, because now it's like I got to earn that coaching respect, you know. And once they started to respect me and understand that I was a little older than them, but my knowledge, my IQ for basketball was a little higher in a sense. And their goals were different than mine. I mean, I really wanted to be a coach. So once I left there, I started coaching high school. I stuck with high school for a while, coached young girls, girls high school, and I coached boys high school. And oh, thank you, Alina. She's an amazing coach. Young girls, boys. I coached men, which was difficult. I even dabbled in being a sports agent. That was the most difficult because now here it is. You know, I'm a woman, attractive woman, and trying to maintain this business relationship with players that constantly see, and when they go out, they want to go to strip clubs, they want to go to restaurants. All they see is now I have this money that I'm about to come into. So when a lot of young boys, when they receive money, sex, drugs, you know.
You gotta talk about. I mean, did you ever get to try to talk them out of it? Because you know, drugs is a.
I didn't sign up to do that.
I mean, seriously.
Even though that's a part of the job at any level, but you're talking about grown men, you know. So now I'm spending more time trying to mentor. Like I had one player who wanted to buy a brand new Escalade, coming into a contract. I'm like, the Escalade costs more than your contract. The contract was only $75,000. This was a first-year player coming out of college. Take the contract, go play ball. You'll get more. You know what I'm saying? And he had the tools. He was 6'10". So that I couldn't fight with. I couldn't fight him on it. I don't know if he bought the Escalade. I just stopped, you know, wasting my time. But
you can't. I mean, you could at least tell them how you feel. I mean, how you feel, because drugs is not good on your body.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it wasn't so
That's
much.
why I don't do it.
It was more so of the women. It was more so women. They want to go to the strip clubs. We're going out to dinner. We're going to talk, potential teams. All of the available teams. That they possibly, like, potential teams that they can play for overseas. But they're talking about who they're going to bring home. So those conversations wasn't pleasant for me. So I had some issues that I won't talk about now, being a sports agent. So I just kind of walked away from the career altogether and went back into coaching.
Exactly. I mean, and now you're back at the coaching. Like, why don't you talk about like the day-to-day operations when it comes to like being a coach, when like preparing your players, this constructive criticism that was given to you, you give to them, and having them prepare game in and game out.
Yeah. Well, preparation is key for me. So I always prepare my players, always, at any level. I coached some girls from 6th grade up until 10th, 11th grade. So the key thing was preparation. Like, I would never put them in a position where they wasn't successful. So you get 5 players on the court. You have to know every single player, what they do best, what they're skillful. I wouldn't put a player who couldn't guard, someone that's fast. I wouldn't put them at the top of the key. So I would learn my players' skill level and put them in positions on the court where they can be successful at any given time. Especially at the high school level where you have college coaches coming to evaluate them. I wouldn't throw them out there just for playing time. I will put them out there where they can be successful. If I know a player can shoot, I'm going to put them in a position. I'm going to run some plays where they can be successful shooting, show their skill. If they come shoot up the dribble, I'm going to put them in position to shoot up the dribble. Play D, yes, we'll do both. So that's one thing I was great at. I was able to look at players and identify their strengths and weaknesses on and off the court. So I made sure that they were successful.
Exactly, because if you don't do that, then some players are going to come in, they're going to have at least either 5 or 6 bad nights coming on the court statistically, or they have one good night for every 5 or 6 not so great nights in the points, assists, and rebounds column. I mean, you got to teach them that, because that's how they're going to become better players. Like down the road, and good players actually become analysts, like what you do right now. Right. I mean, being able to talk basketball on the court.
Yes.
What play-by-play announcers.
Right, and that's fun to me, because you sort of do that anyway when you're with your friends, or when you're with like-minded individuals who love sports. You're kind of doing that in a sense. I mean, obviously it's more in depth when you're behind a mic, but like I do that. Like right now, I forgot that. I'm not gonna lie, I did forget we had an interview, but I was supposed to be commentating, practicing the Bellarmine and Kentucky game because I like Calipari. I like how he, strategizes, and I like his players. So, they're going to win and lose, but I just like the strategy. So I was supposed to commentate the game. But and that's how I practice. And there's times I get nervous because I always want to do a good job. I want to be great at it, so I can't force it. So the best thing for me to do is practice. Like I said, I always prepare and just want to be good at whatever it is that I do. So practice, and prepare,
Exactly. That's how you do it. Now, and just switch gears real quick. We want to talk about like how you made a positive impact in basketball or in your community as a whole, especially with the Harlem Renaissance Classic that you had a few weeks ago at City College in Upper Manhattan.
Well, it all started how I was introduced to the Harlem Renaissance Classic. In my sorrow, a friend of mine, she introduced me with the president of the Harlem Renaissance Classic. His name is Darryl Roberts. He's been doing this for years. This is his thing, his baby. And I adored the concept. His company, his nonprofit organization is Bridging Holes. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, or basically what he's doing is filling in the gap between HBCUs and PWIs, and they don't get the same acknowledgement as the PWIs, with whether if it's media, whether if it's finance, whether if it's just enrollment, admissions, advertisement. They don't get the same acknowledgement as the PWIs. So with his organization, he was able to provide that for bridging structural holes. That's the name of it. Thank you, Daryl. Bridging structural holes. I'll never forget that. So, and I think that it speaks for itself. So the structural holes, is the gap between the PWIs and the HBCUs. And I just love that concept. I came from an HBCU. I love my experience. There's nothing about it that I resent. I was a single mother in college. They had a single parent program for single mothers at St. Paul's College. They treated me wonderfully, wonderfully, to the point where I had assistants. Like my major was political science. My instructor, my professor, his name was Dr. Khan. He was from Pakistan. Phenomenal. You would have thought he was my dad. He made sure that I had all of the grants. He made sure I had the scholarships. He applied for me to go to London School of Economics, and I got accepted. He applied to Ohio State Law School. He just had so much faith and confidence in me because I maintained a 4.0 when I was in college. They did everything for me. They rented a van. They got me a hotel room. They prepped me and with my interview at Ohio State for the minority law school program, scholarship as well. They drove me out there for the weekend. I interviewed. I killed it. Drove back. I want to say a couple of weeks later, I was accepted. So I can never forget what St. Paul's did to me. So that HBCU, I can't imagine the resources that they have today. So I will always encourage young kids to attend a HBCU or look into one. Look into it. See how it benefits you, your culture. You don't have to worry about forming cliques. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to learn and be educated, or just to dabble in like the fraternities and sororities, that brotherhood with like-minded individuals that share the same experiences in life. It's just a wonderful experience that you can embrace. So I would never, I can never speak anything negative about my HBCU experience.
Exactly. And speaking about HBCUs, I will say this. It's good that you actually decided to have like 6 different colleges in 3 games being hosted at a New York area college. Because seriously, us New Yorkers, we need more HBCU games in the borough of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx,
yes,
Staten Island. We need more HBCU games like this. And you have other HBCU basketball events. I believe it's at the Prudential Center.
Yeah.
The Prudential Center, you have HBCU games going there. We need more HBCU games in the tri-state area in order to get us New Yorkers invested into HBCUs.
Right. And exactly. And it's like this past year, I know Nike got involved and they was able to host a HBCU game during the CIAA. They brought them up into I want to say it was Madison Square Garden. But now being that, there's social media and there's a lot of coverage, and I know what Coach Prime is doing for Jackson State, his school. He's doing wonderful things for HBCU. So he had actually gained a lot of attention for HBCUs as a whole, But I think that Harlem Renaissance Classic was wonderful. It was symbolic. It was at City College of New York. And I don't know if you know, but that it just has like a negative reputation at City College, because you're talking about back in 2003 when Puffy had a concert. The kids, there was like.
You talking about Puff Daddy? You talking about P. Diddy?
That something happened and kids died. People died there. 9 people died because they was rushing.
Oh, I didn't know.
It was a stampede. I'm not sure what took place, but they were running out and it was a stampede and 9 people got trampled and died. So to bring something that was positive back to CCNY, you're talking about for 2 years, that's epic. You can't, you know what I mean? Like you can't beat that. You can't beat that. And we had some, it was in 1991. But it's just a wonderful event. You had 6 teams, I can't even.
Salem State, Thomas Jefferson. Well, I mentioned with Salem State, was Stephen A. Smith's alma mater. You had
State, Lincoln University.
Those
are the HBCUs, So.
Exactly. Yeah, so negative at City College. Much racism there in the 90s. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, well, obviously, if you obviously, well, imagine attention to the school. There's a lot of racism. That could be pretty rough. But you already mentioned that you went through enough rough times already
Yeah.
without the so-called racism that we see today.
Right. Right.
All
Right.
I can say is like, why don't you break? I mean,
Thank you.
it's not. I mean, what also makes an HBCU focused basketball event occurs the way it did is also the camera people that were behind. I mean, you had Here's Johnny, the guy that you interviewed. I actually had him. I host a sports show, nothing but that sports talk.
Okay.
Sports talk, and I once interviewed Here's Johnny like a year ago to
Okay.
talk about his announcing career, like being a hardcore Yankee fan. And I interviewed in going to college at Oswego University, talk about wanting to be a broadcaster, but he ended up doing an announcer for that game. Like, what do you think that Here's Johnny brought to the whole atmosphere at Harlem Renaissance Classic?
Johnny brought youthfulness. He brought energy. You know, he brought positivity. Like a lot of the players that he's announced with and for, they came to support him. You know, and that's huge. That's like a huge honor because nowadays you think like this Gen Z, you know, this generation, they don't support, but they stepping up, you know, and they came out, they literally came over to say hello to him. He was interviewing, you know, players his age in a sense, you know, and they respected that. You know, Johnny is a young, he's a talented young man, and he's had a ahead of him, especially in this industry. He knows basketball. He loves it. He brings that in. I can't say better words, you know, about him. I can't.
You really can. It's good. It's good that you managed to give the guy an opportunity to announce it for to 3 HBCU games, and then you have guys like Dave joins the Hoop Dreams and Shay Days doing videography and journalism about HBCU schools.
Yeah.
Three black people covering HBCU events. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's the same concept that Daryl, you know, which is the president of the Harlem Renaissance Classic, it's the same concept that he brought to every component, you know, involved in this. You have announcers, like you have Johnny. When was Johnny going to ever be in a situation when he gets to interview HBCU players, interview the coaches, just get that feel for it, see the band, the culture, like everything behind the HBCU culture. He was able to experience that, and not we're talking about other individuals as a whole. You know, you got to get all of that in one day. You know, you saw the different bands. Oh my gosh, the Greeks came out. You had the Alphas, you had the Kappas. The Kappas came out doing their thing. I mean, we had one guy, he had my hair like mine. He came out smooth. I was flawed. He came out with this cane. You know, the Kappas, they come out and they step. But they walked on the floor, did their thing. The Deltas came out, the young Deltas came out, the Ladybugs, the AKAs. It was a wonderful event. So if you didn't attend the HBCU, you did that day. You did that day. That's what the HBCUs are about. You know, family environment. I mean, people came in their, you know, memorabilia, their paraphernalia from their Greeks and from their Greek organizations, the Soros. It was such an amazing environment. This year just really outdid last year, so it's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, what did they do it last year? I'm curious.
That's right. I'm sorry to cut you off, but yes, he said a woman interviewing. I interviewed Earl the Pearl.
Earl the Pearl Monroe for the New York Knicks. I know you were happy about that. Like
what? And then DJ Tony Love. I mean, he made a good point. He's an announcer for the NBA. He took time away from his day to come and support and be a part of this event. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like what this event did for people. It changed lives. It changed my life. Earl the Pearl. Literally before this interview, I was in the studio, you know, with an editor as well, and we was editing the video. We want this thing to be great. I was so honored to sit next to Earl the Pearl. You talking about an iconic figure, somebody I never thought I'd meet growing up. You know,
you made a Patrick Ewing.
I mean,
well, actually, not really teammate Patrick Ewing. I mean, it was before Patrick Ewing's time, but yeah.
Oh yeah, you talking about he was drafted 1967.
67, yeah. It was way before Patrick Ewing's time. I mean, it was during the years when the Knicks actually won championships.
1967. Yes. He was drafted to the NBA, and I interviewed him he said that you was only allowed 6 Black players. Yeah, I was nervous, but hey, who gets you nervous talking to Earl the Pearl, the greats? I was nervous at first. Yeah, but I just enjoyed, every bit of it. And, on Saturday, I went from commentating to interviewing to just being a social butterfly around the arena because there was faces there I recognized, and I just wanted to really absorb myself in that entire atmosphere, so it's always an amazing time for me.
Yeah, it's amazing when you get to interview a New York Knicks player coming to an HBCU. I mean, come on. That's all I gotta say. I mean, where did you do the HBCU like a year prior to this year? Was this at City College or a different college?
Prior to last year, it was at City College as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, it's good. I mean, again, it's nice that you're doing the at City College because a lot of people. I mean, it's somewhat a better college to attend what people give it credit for, especially with all the racism. I mean, seriously.
Oh yeah. And that's the whole point of having the Harlem Renaissance Classic. Have it in Harlem, bring the HBCUs to Harlem, and the Harlem Renaissance. They get to actually walk on the grounds of Harlem when there may not ever be an opportunity that they get to do. So it's wonderful to take a kid out of that environment and bring them to another environment that has history, that has history. So that's what Daryl brought to the table.
Exactly, and so while we're on the subject, like, how do you and Daryl select, when you're picking a team to play in the Harlem Renaissance Classic, do you pick them based on how good the team is as a whole, or just like
no,
how do you pick the teams?
Well, he had his way of, and he's on here. I'm sure he can answer that, but he was the one who selected the teams. That wasn't my job. Pretty much, he had everything before I got involved. Phenomenal in organizing this event. So he worked hard, not 9 to 5. He worked 24/7 on this event, heart and soul into it. So that his affected mine. So if any 2 cents, I gave it. So no, he didn't pick it according to how good this team was, or how all of those people, and like he said, it was a lot of different events. So a lot of alums, who attended schools was able to, but he didn't pick them according to who they were, because all 3 games were very competitive. If you didn't look at the scores, it was a competitive game.
Yeah, I know there has to be at least one game where it went down to the final seconds or an overtime or somewhere around those realms.
Very close game. It was a close game. Yeah, close game. Skill for skill, coaches. I mean, we had some coaches that were really coached under some legendary coaches. You talk about Thomas Jefferson. It was just a wonderful event. And the one coach from St. Thomas Aquinas, he said to me, talking about the game didn't even start. I mean, this is in the warm-up line. He said to me, this is a wonderful event. You can count us in every year. And I said, that's wonderful. I'm glad that, you feel that way. If we can do it every year, we will. And this is something that's going to be going on for life.
Exactly. Well,
shrinking the racial divide. And that's the whole mission, shrinking the racial divide. It has to start somewhere, because still there's an imbalance in funding for HBCU as opposed to PWI.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much told the same thing when I interviewed the founder for Dyckman Park earlier this year. I mean, when you put together basketball games or basketball classics, you have to invest in a lot of money into it. It takes a lot of investments.
It does, and it takes a lot of support from these big Fortune 50 companies. You know what I'm saying? So these companies that you're talking about, like Amazon, all these companies that act like they try to spread this racial divide. Now we got Comcast, all these companies that have to use, I know I can't go with Verizon. I have to use Comcast. So you know what? I'm going to go to Comcast. Look, I have this event. I've been a customer for X amount of years. I can't even go to Verizon if I wanted to. Why? Why do you get to monopolize, the network, cable network. So, you know, that's how I look at it. So we just got to tap into these companies. If they're there, you know, not be afraid, tap in, ask for some money. I don't care if it's $500. You know, they got to come out their pocket. We pour into them, they can pour into us.
Exactly. Exactly. We just keep working. Now, I mean, is there any upcoming events or products that you'd like to share with the viewers on Instagram Live?
Is there any upcoming events?
Any events or products that you'd like to share with us?
Nothing for now. Other than, you know, I'm looking for releasing and getting published sometime this year, if not early January. The story means me, but I definitely will. You know, I'm not there yet, but other than that, Harlem Renaissance Classes will be back next year. We're literally working on it as we speak. So I know that probably already had it, so he's on it.
Yeah, because your friend Daryl from the HRC Culture is saying you got big things in the work. So yeah, I just figured I'd ask us so you can give at least a snippet of it. And I look forward to seeing your new book get published. And want to tell us everybody about where people can find you and what social media platforms they can find you in.
My tag name for Instagram is Eva_preneur, like entrepreneurs, or preneur. You can find my, it's My Little Time, or you could just type it in the search, or you can go to my page. There's a link there, and you'll find my book. My book will come right up.
And I look forward to that. Okay, Rachel, thank you for stopping by, and I love hearing your story about overcoming the family, overcoming the abuse, and being a basketball player, going up into the women that you are today, and getting your involvement with the HR culture, and that phenomenal moment where you interviewed Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Oh yes, that was exciting.
You get your flowers, definitely.
Thank you, thank you.
And now in this featured Gardner segment for Planted Not Buried, I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night.